My name is Zach. I'm a junior at Ball State, and my major is business information systems.
My name is Ryan Ayers. I'm a junior and I'm here for business admin.
My name is William Stenner. I'm a junior and I'm here for business analytics.
I'm Caden Donzi. I'm a junior and I'm here for marketing.
And I'm Iris Martz. I'm a sophomore and I'm studying hospitality.
All right, so I'm going to kick us off. So, our project focuses on Boeing and the major management issues the company has been dealing with. And when we started digging into the history, it became pretty clear that Boeing's problems aren't just about airplanes or engineering mistakes. Most of them actually trace back to management decisions and the internal culture behind those decisions. Boeing has had a rough stretch. Constant CEO turnover, tension between executives and engineers, safety payouts, tough working conditions, shortcuts in the manufacturing process, and major delays in delivering finished aircraft. When you look at all of that together, it paints a picture of a company that's struggling internally long before anything reaches the public. But instead of trying to cover everything, we narrowed our focus to the two issues that sit underneath nearly all of the others: CEO instability and poor employee working conditions. These two problems influence almost everything else: morale, communication, product quality, safety, and the company's overall direction. So, our presentation breaks down why these issues matter, the solutions we think are actually realistic for Boeing, and how the company can measure whether those changes are working. And with that, I'll hand it over to the next section where we go deeper into the specific management problems we've identified and why these two stood out the most.
All right, yeah. So we're gonna break down the six problems that we found within Boeing. We got retaliation with upper management and engineers, millions of dollars paid in safety violations. They're known for taking shortcuts in their manufacturing. They're over $600 billion in undelivered orders. And then the main two, they have a revolving door within management, which in the last 10 years, there's been four different CEO changes. And this constant turnover in leadership creates a chaotic and uncertain environment for employees. Every time a new manager or CEO comes in, they don't understand the norms of the company, and it takes time for them to adjust to know how it should be ran. Some of the most recent CEO hires are Dave Callahan, Dennis Mullenberg, and Kelly Ortberg. When a company's leadership lacks clear direction and a positive work environment, employees tend to struggle to perform at the highest standard compared to when a company has clear direction and leadership that is involved in interacting with lower level employees. And second, we got the poor working conditions. They have unsustainable pressure, difficult deadlines, and even unreasonable expectations. Um, Having a poor work environment is an issue because workers become unmotivated and will do the bare minimum to get by without getting scrutinized by management. Employees of Boeing have recently expressed that high schedule pressures had caused their team to lower its standards by less than two-thirds and felt that if they had the training or tools necessary that they would be able to do their job better. This implies that a major lack of executive oversight and care, which in turn leads to poor employee morale and motivation and overall product. And I'll hand it off to William.
Yeah, for those two solutions, we came up with, or for those two problems, we came up with solutions. First, we focused on reducing CEO turnover at Boeing. One of the most important ones was implementing a clawback policy so that if a CEO is to break their contract, their key benefits are revoked, along with a forfeit to any stock, severance, or additional perks they had if they leave early. We also suggested that creating better incentives that reward the CEOs for long-term commitment will help stabilize the company's direction and support new leaders, as well as a more structured onboarding process to help the new CEOs transition smoothly so that they understand Boeing's culture and expectations from day one. For the second issue, we proposed that providing overtime pay for salaried employees that work over 40 hours to ensure fair compensation and help reduce burnout among the teams. Hosting company retreats would also boost the morale and give employees a chance to reset, allowing for longer project times, and it would help eliminate rushed work. This would both improve on safety and product quality. Finally, we implemented an anonymous manager performance review that we would give to employees so that they could identify leadership's issues. Overall, all of these issues aim to strengthen the leadership stability and create a safer, more supportive work environment for everybody at the company. On to Caden.
So I'm going to start out by talking about implementing the clawback policy. So starting with that, we need to draft a policy with a board of directors, um, while also working closely with HR and legal departments just to make sure that the policy adheres to all state, federal, and international laws. The policy must be strategically negotiated, not framing the clawback as a penalty, but more as a way to reinforce Boeing's core values, while it also being a non-negotiable part of the executive contract. One example of a successful implementation of this policy was in 2017, where Wells Fargo implemented it and recovered 75 million from their former executives. And moving on to our employee work condition improvements. So, firstly, we want to implement overtime pay. So, in order for that to happen, HR would have to convert the pay structure for non-exempt salaried employees and put them on a hourly rate so that overtime pay is legal for them. Past that, HR and finance must also do a full cost analysis, and implementing the change would come in phases, just so they can track the impact that this change is having on retention, before they do a company-wide rollout. Um, our second idea and how to implement it is doing a company retreat. So for that to work, logistical planning needs to be done months ahead. And this includes the trip itself, travel costs, catering, the activities that people will do, and housing situations if that comes up. Um, and for these retreats to be successful, they need to be ran by leadership and they need to have a very clear goal in mind. That way, something is getting done while they are at these retreats and it's not just a paid vacation. And finally, implementing the surveys would be pretty straightforward. Every quarter, HR would send out these surveys. Once they're completed, HR would look at them and decide what changes they need to make going forward. And this is also a great way to see if previous changes have had a positive impact. And if they didn't, they can figure out exactly why they didn't have the impact they hoped for. And I'm going to pass it off to Iris.
Yeah, so as Caden and William touched on, instability at the executive level will have to be addressed by implementing structural changes that promote long-term executive health and sustained strategy. We will track this success with clear key performance indicators. Quantitatively, success will be measured by two factors. First is an increased average CEO tenure, with the goal of achieving an average of 5 years or longer. This target is strategically aligned with managerial research that suggests stability is critical for long-term strategic execution and moving beyond the initial organizational response to mandate, as Hambrick and Fukutomi suggest. Second, we will monitor increased revenue growth. This serves as a direct financial reflection of sustained executive health and the effectiveness of their strategy. Qualitatively, success relies on rebuilding trust. We will measure this by tracking employee and customer satisfaction through anonymous surveys. These surveys will include open-ended questions that evaluate overall performance of the CEO as well as the perceived quality of the product. This will provide us with a critical pulse point for the direction of the company. The second and equally critical area is the issue of poor employee working conditions. These are primarily driven by forced overtime. We aim to fix this by implementing proper overtime pay and incentives for all eligible salaried employees. Further, we are implementing continuous training to ensure staff are fully competent in manufacturing, tooling, quality, and safety, a need which is supported by research from Weddell and Mellors. The rationale behind fixing long working hours is compelling. Demby and his colleagues have said that working 12 or more hours per day is proven to increase the hazard rate for occupational injuries by as much as 37%. Quantitatively, our targets for improving the working environment are straightforward. First, we must reduce employee burnout which we will measure by setting a target to reduce the voluntary employee turnover rate by 15% within the first 2 years of implementing changes. Secondly, we must improve safety. We will reduce all documented safety incidents, including near misses and occupational injuries, by 20% within the same 2-year period. This will ensure that our changes are making positive differences on the factory floor. Crucially, the funding for the proposed overtime incentives will come directly from the cost savings generated by these improvements. We will project a positive ROI because better working conditions means less human error, fewer injuries, and lower turnover. Specifically, every dollar spent on fair overtime pay and training will be offset by the reduced cost of replacing skilled workers and the substantial decrease in expensive rework and scrap. Qualitatively, we will gauge the effectiveness of our solutions through anonymous quarterly employee surveys. These surveys will ask open-ended questions about work-life balance and job satisfaction. We specifically aim to gather direct opinions about the proposed changes to overtime and overtime pay. This method is endorsed by Verdoing. As a result of these efforts, we should expect to see a clear increase in morale and satisfaction each quarter. This is a finding that is consistent with the research of Glenn. To ensure success, the executive team must commit to communicating survey results and taking decisive action to address negative feedback, thereby building crucial trust with their employees. These solutions, which are backed by clear quantitative and qualitative checkpoints, are designed to hold leadership accountable and to make real substantial change, and ultimately to restore the integrity of the Boeing Corporation. Now back to Zach.
To wrap things up, what we found is that Boeing's biggest challenges don't come from one event or one mistake. They've built up over years of unstable leadership and declining working conditions. And those two issues set the stage for everything else the company has been dealing with. The solutions we presented, improving leadership accountability through callback policies, stabilizing CEO tenure, strengthening working conditions, improving overtime structure, and building a healthier culture through retreats and feedback systems, all tied directly back to the issues on our slides. These aren't one-time fixes. They're long-term changes that address the root causes instead of the symptoms. And what makes our recommendations more realistic is that they're tied to measurable KPIs. Boeing can track CEO tenure, turnover rates, safety improvements, rework reductions, morale scores, all things that show whether the organization is actually improving. That way, they're not guessing. They're evaluating progress the same way that they would evaluate performance in any other part of the business. So the big takeaway is this: if Boeing commits to these changes and holds both leadership and the organization accountable, they'll be able to rebuild trust, improve product quality, and create a safer and healthier environment for employees. Thank you.